Welcome to SI Now. I'm Robin Lundberg with Amy Campbell. And Amy, Vikings fans likely feeling pretty good today. The rest of us probably watched the end of that game in stunned disbelief like Damian Lillard.
Damian Lillard, obviously not a Vikings fan, I guess, or maybe he's a Saints fan. Robin, that was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Stephon Diggs in turns, and there's nothing but grass between him and the win. One of my very good friends over at my house, lifelong Vikings fan, laughing and crying at the same time. And she said something I thought was so insightful. She said, Vikings fans, we're just so used to disappointment. You have no idea how much this means. I think that sums it up. One of the great stories.
Yeah, if I was a Vikings fan, I would have ordered one of those horns off of eBay and been blowing it all day. But we're joined now by former All-Pro running back Tiki Barber to go over everything from the weekend. And Tiki, where does that ending rank amongst all you've seen?
It's up there. I mean, I was too young for the immaculate reception. Maybe the catch, I was too young for that as well, but they would put those in that category. But here's another one that I was on the wrong side of. San Francisco Giants versus San Francisco 49ers versus our New York Giants in 2003, and they came back from an epic comeback in the wild card round. I think we were up by 24 points. T.O. and Jeff Garcia just ripped us apart in the second half, and it was iconic for 49ers fans. It was tragic for us Giants.
Well, there's never been a walk-off touchdown like that in postseason history. So the question I think a lot of people are asking is, how did the Saints allow the Diggs play to happen? My theory is that Marcus Williams overcommitted as the safety, and at the last second thought he was early and tried to avoid a pass interference penalty and sort of dove out of the way. What do you think?
Well, there's a couple of things here. Very rarely do you see this defense. It's like a funnel zone, right? Just make sure everything goes inside, protect the sidelines. And Marcus Williams is a rookie. Let's not forget that. So he's a rookie playing in an odd defense. You don't play this 30 snaps a game. You maybe play it 2 snaps a game. And then he was also likely told, do not foul. So, as to your point, Robin, do not get a pass interference and do not get a hit on a defenseless receiver, because we all know a game can't end on a defensive penalty. And so, in order to prevent that, he didn't shore up the tackle. Just go tackle the guy and keep him in bounds, or let him land and then try to tackle him, as opposed to trying to disrupt it mid-flight, and he completely whiffed and created one of the most miraculous endings that I think any of us have ever seen, because this game was over for I guess all intents and purposes until Case Keenum put this ball out. And if you talk to the Vikings players, they said, that never goes that corner route. The ball never goes there, but it did, and they scored.
Just one of those meant to be kind of moments.
Feels like
there.
It, right?
Yeah. So we see this game ends in a shootout, ends in crazy fashion. But Minnesota did have a 17-0 lead, and then the second half gets going. Everything changes. We've said all year this is one of the most complete teams. There's not really any glaring weaknesses here with the Vikings. But do you think this win shows a potential weakness, that they allowed this comeback, or are they really that good?
Well, I think that then discounts how good the New Orleans Saints are. Let's not forget how this game played out. Drew Brees made some mistakes early in the game. One, the ball got tipped and got intercepted, but they made some mistakes, and their scoring opportunities got negated early. And so they go into halftime, down 17-0, and then the Saints defense actually played fantastic, only giving up 2 field goals until that last touchdown. And so I don't think it's a knock on the Minnesota Vikings. I think they are fantastic. They had the #1 defense in the National Football League this year. As long as Case Keenum is not trying to play hero football like he did after the Saints scored their first touchdown, he's getting harassed. He throws that interception, interestingly, to Marcus Williams. This team is as good as any team in the National Football League. I think every team that played in this divisional round is flawed in some way, except for possibly the New England Patriots, who just, at this point in the season, know how to win.
With the way the Vikings have set up this team, do you think it matters who plays quarterback?
It does, because you have to be smart. Right? You have to be able to not make the mistake in a critical situation. Now, we saw Case Keenum do this about week 12 or so. Similar type of situation. Other team scores. He feels pressed a little bit, and he wants to be the hero. I'm gonna fix this for us, and he makes a stupid play. As long as Case controls that urge, I think this Minnesota Vikings team is a force to be a force in the postseason left, and they might get a chance to play in their home stadium for the Super Bowl.
Now, with the Vikings, they're going to move on, of course, in the NFC to play the Eagles. Now, Considering where the Eagles were overall, I found it a little odd that they were underdogs at home off of a bye. Were they undersold a little bit because of Nick Foles?
Well, I mean, Nick didn't play great the last couple of games. He played fantastic against the Giants where he threw 4 touchdowns. But other than that, he left a lot to be desired on the football field. But the X factor in this game was a couple of things. One, their run game was fantastic. But two, they literally have home field advantage. And what I mean by that is that field is terrible at the Link. You could see it. The grass was coming up. And when it came down to it in the fourth quarter on the 4th down play for the Atlanta Falcons, Julio Jones slips in the end zone. It's a play that they probably practiced 100 times and probably completed 100 or so more. But he comes out of his break and he falls down, which leaves them in a desperate type situation to try to make a play in the back of the end zone. It wouldn't have counted even if he had caught it because he landed out of bounds. But the field itself gave the Philadelphia Eagles a chance to go on to the NFC Championship.
Let's shift to the AFC. The Jaguars upset the Steelers. How much criticism do you think Mike Tomlin deserves for the late game?
Oh, a lot. Because it gets confusing when you think about what he was doing. Like, he believed that Blake Bortles couldn't beat him, and you know that because he went for it on 4th down 6 times. Now he converted on 4 of those, including 2 pretty big touchdowns. But to go for the onside kick after scoring, it was the wrong decision because it shortens the field. And if, like I said, you believed that Blake Bortles couldn't beat you, kick him all the way back there. And then he also made a mistake down once they did finally get into scoring range and not kicking the field goal for it first. They needed 10 points. He didn't kick the field goal. Instead, he tried to go for the touchdown, which burned out the clock. And so by the time they finally got that touchdown, there was no time left.
Let me defend the onside kick because horrible execution. Nobody can argue that. But I don't mind that call because if the kick itself travels the distance it's supposed to, you are giving yourself another chance to get the ball, and you need a 3 and out anyway. Any first down ends the game. So why was that the wrong call?
Because one of the most critical and forgot about components of winning in the National Football League is field position. So say you get that onside kick, or say you don't get the onside kick, and you hold them to a 3 and out. Now they're punting you back into, deep into your own end, and you have 70-something or 80 yards to go. If you kick off and you hold Blake Bortles, who's going to be conservative, they're not going to throw the ball downfield. They're going to hand it off 3 times and then punt, because that's what you do in a 4-minute offense type of situations. You hold the Jacksonville Jaguars there. You have pretty good field position coming back the other way.
Go ahead, Robin.
I guess I'm valuing the chance at getting the onside kick, over
not with
the
2 minutes
field
left.
position there.
Not with 2 minutes left. You don't need to do it then.
Well, you sure look right after the way it turned out.
I know that wasn't what Robin wanted to hear, but let's talk more about Blake Bortles. He's consistently been the question with this Jaguars team. We know their defense is one of the best and good enough to win a Super Bowl. They've got that running game going. Bortles has been the liability, making those critical mistakes at the critical times. He looked pretty good over the weekend.
He looked consistently average.
How much credit do you give him in this win?
I give Nathaniel Hackett, who's their offensive coordinator, a ton of credit because they've told Blake, just don't make a mistake, right? You can be average. We have maybe the best run game in the National Football League, definitely the best run defense in the National Football League. All you have to do is not make mistakes. And we saw this manifest itself last weekend in the wild card round. He couldn't throw the ball. We saw it in the first couple of series. He's like, I'm not getting it anywhere. The wind was swirling a little bit. It's a beautiful day down there, but the wind was swirling and he was inaccurate. So he just ran. Right? Whenever he got into a passing situation, he would take off and pick up the first downs with his legs. We saw the same thing here. I mean, he only completed 53% or so of his passes, but he didn't turn the ball over. And that was the most important thing that he couldn't do. He did convert on 3rd down. He made the short throws when he had to. And his players, his playmakers around him, including TJ Yeldon on a couple of those 3rd downs, his fullback on the touchdown that he scooted up the middle, they all made the plays around him. And that's why this Jacksonville team is going on to the AFC Championship game in improbable fashion. Because I think the Steelers were better, right? I think they were. You look at the total yardage. You look at all the the intangibles in this game. It was all Steelers, but the Steelers made 2 critical mistakes One turnover that led to point-blank range for the Jaguars, and then obviously the sack fumble that resulted directly in a touchdown. That's the difference in this game.
Regardless of how Bortles looks moving forward, I think probably UCF will announce him the MVP of the Super Bowl. Do you trust him moving forward?
I trust the defense moving forward. I mean, the Patriots are so sound at this point in the NFL season. You know Tom Brady is going to be on point, just like he was against the Tennessee Titans. Not that they offer any type of a defensive resistance like the Jacksonville Jaguars do. But the Pats defense, which has been maligned all season, yeah, they were 29th in yards, but they don't give up points. They were 5th in points given up this year, which is spectacular. And so Jacksonville's really going to have to work. And if they get behind in this game, it's over. I mean, even if it's 7-0 early in this game, I think the Pats have a distinct advantage. But as we have said all season long, if there's one team that's ideally situated to beat the Patriots, it is the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. They have great corners. So if Tom Brady's forced to throw the ball down the field, Jalen Ramsey and A.J. Boye will take advantage of it, and they don't have to blitz extra defenders to get pressure on the quarterback. So Jacksonville, if the team can beat the Pats, it's them. It's just a matter of whether or not offensively they can score enough to do so.
Jalen Ramsey agrees with you because he had this to say after the Jaguars win.
I ain't got too much to say, but y'all make sure y'all bring that same energy out here next week and the week after. We going to the Super Bowl, and we going to win that. We gonna win that Duval.
Now, Tiki, one of my rules of thumb is to not pick against the Patriots, but for some of the reasons you just said, I'm kind of feeling Jacksonville in this game because every team that beats New England has that same sort of formula. They can get the rush with 4, they can drop back into coverage. I'd expect Belichick to try and flip the script a little bit and go with a power running game for New England.
My only advice for you, if you're going to pick against the Pats, do it with the spread. Don't do it straight up, especially in a home game. Look, this Josh McDaniels he's an offensive genius, just like Belichick is a defensive one, and Matt Patricia, who is one of the hottest commodities to be a head coach, knows how to get the most out of his players. You know that there's going to be a game plan that the Jacksonville Jaguars haven't seen, and so this could turn into chess and checkers type thing as it comes to game planning this AFC Championship game. I know the Jacksonville Jaguars will keep it close, and it will be a tight and interesting game. But I can't bet against the New England Patriots. They've been to this stage way too many times and had too much success in all these years.
Now, if you're looking at the conference championship game quarterbacks, you could say one of these guys is not like the others. Of course, that being Tom Brady there. But in a sense, does it show you that quarterback play is a little bit overrated? What I mean by that is that's all we ever talk about. Yet here is Case Keenum and Blake Bortles and Nick Foles.
It's a great question, and it's a great point because going into the divisional round, you had 4 really experienced quarterbacks and Blake, Drew Brees and Matt Ryan and Ben Roethlisberger and Tom Brady playing against 4 neophytes basically on the other side. But the other side on all of those matchups, except for really Tennessee, had the better defense. And so I think what we're learning is that, quarterbacking is fantastic. It's absolutely necessary to be successful and ultimately win a championship. But if you don't have a defense, it's just not happening. And we saw that in the Pittsburgh game. Pittsburgh's defense, Artie Burns and Joe Hayden, they look confused out there and lost a lot of times. Jacksonville never had any of that. Minnesota really never had any of that. And so defense is necessary at this point in the season. I think all really good teams have played that way going down the stretch. The quarterbacking is important, but it's not the only thing.
Well, that defense is what carries you when your quarterback is maybe making some mistakes. That's what carries it the long haul, like you mentioned. So we do have these quarterbacks that were unexpected. Some of them, most of them, except for Tom Brady, haven't been here before. And like you said, 3 of the top defenses in the league, and of course the Patriots are peaking. That's been a weak spot for them this season, but they're looking better and better every week, like they always do every year. Which of these defenses would you be most afraid of?
It's got to be Minnesota. They just get after you. And their safeties are big. Their corners are big, so they can attack you in so many different ways. And they have an energy. The only issue for me is that they're going to play outside in Philadelphia. And so whether or not that changes how they attack, The Eagles, we'll see. You know, we go back to the quarterbacks, and Nick Foles, interestingly, we know back in 2013 he had that ridiculous season with 27 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. He actually played great in the postseason, in the playoff game that they played. It was similar statistics that he had in this game. So while we knocked him, maybe history would have told us he's actually going to play okay. And their defense played well also against the Atlanta Falcons.
Well, we know you like the Jaguars with the points, but the Patriots overall. So who do you like in the NFC game? Who's playing in the Super Bowl?
I think it's going to be the Vikings. I mean, it's almost, maybe that's just emotional. I just want to see a home team, you know, play in their own stadium. But consistently all season long, they've had it on both sides of the football. Defensively, they're number one, as we mentioned. And offensively, Stephon Diggs and even Jarrett McKinnon, who had a significant impact in this game, they have the weapons. And that's not even talking about Adam Thielen. They have the weapons offensively to run with anybody, and defensively, they're tops in the league.
Well, let's get to some breaking news that we have this morning. The Titans and Mike Mularkey parting ways. Mutually parting ways.
That's what they say for firing now.
So they say, 2 weeks ago we thought, or a week ago we thought this guy had won his way off the hot seat with that win over the Chiefs. Yesterday we're hearing he's going to get a big extension. Now the team is moving on without him. Are you surprised by this?
No, not at all. I mean, when you hear Amy Adams Strunk say he's our coach going forward, but so it was clearly, and she said it like 3 times, like going forward. It was almost intentional to say not our coach for 2018, but just going forward, whether going forward was 2 weeks or a week, whatever it was. But they probably offered him a lowball extension and something that he wasn't comfortable with, or maybe it was only a 1-year extension so that he isn't a lame duck. And every coach has the right, just like every player has the right, to not want to be in a prove-it year every year. So they weren't committed to making him their long-term answer. He wasn't committed to being a short-term solution, and so they decided to part ways mutually.
Well, if I'm an offensive, innovative coach, I'm licking my chops over Marcus Mariota. So it's going to be fun to see what somebody's going to do with him.
A lot of these young head coaches, maybe hot offensive coordinators, got to be salivating to go to Tennessee.
Thanks, Tiki. We'll be talking more going forward.
Well, certainly.
Joined now by SI senior writer, Planet Football's Grant Wall. Now, Grant, yesterday Liverpool pulled off the impossible, gave Manchester City its first loss of the Premier League season. With Coutinho gone, how did they pull it off?
This was a really impressive performance by Liverpool. Philippe Coutinho, they just sold to Barcelona. Virgil van Dijk, they just spent $100 million on as a defender. Couldn't play. He had an injury, and yet by far the best performance that we've seen from Liverpool all year. A lot of us thought that maybe Man City could go the entire season undefeated in the Premier League. They got more than halfway, but Liverpool is absolutely terrific. They caused so many turnovers in Man City's end and struck quickly. It's the style that Coach Jurgen Klopp wants to play, and it's the best we've seen Liverpool play it. And Man City, no longer invincible.
Now, can another team realistically make a run at the league title, or does Man City still have that on lock?
Man City is ahead by 15 points in the Premier League, which is pretty impossible, I think, at this point for anybody to make up that ground, unless there's just a complete collapse by Manchester City or they deal with a bunch of injuries. I don't see that happening. They're a deep team. They've been terrific all year. And they even had good moments against Liverpool. They stuck with their style, and they were down 4-1. They got 2 late goals, had a chance at making it 4-4. I don't see any team getting really close to Man City.
So the Alexis Sanchez saga continues at Arsenal. He was benched at the team's loss to Bournemouth. It seems like he could be on his way out there. Arsene Wenger had this to say after the game. He was quoted, "He could have moved today or yesterday or not, but it will be decided in the next 48 hours. He is on standby, so I decided not to bring him today. It wasn't that he didn't want to play." Grant, where do you expect Sanchez to land?
Well, there's 2 possibilities at this point, both in Manchester. Manchester City's the one that has been working a long time with Arsenal to get Alexis Sanchez. But Man United has entered the picture very strongly in the last week or so, and there's a really decent chance now that he could go to Manchester United, in part because of the amount of money Man United wants to pay him. And Jose Mourinho came out and said, look, I know that's not the greatest need we have in the attacking end of the field, but when a player like Alexis Sanchez becomes available, it doesn't really matter what your needs are. We want to go after him. So I don't think he would be talking this loudly about it unless he's pretty confident that he can land him.
How do you think his loss will be felt at Arsenal?
That's going to be a tricky one. He's been Arsenal's best player for a long time, and I know right now the Arsenal fans are really unhappy. If you saw the reaction from some of the fans the other day to that loss against Bournemouth. And so they're going to need to replace him, I would think, with somebody here in this January transfer window. There's talk of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, the center forward for Dortmund, who's been terrific in recent years, has been a little bit more of a disciplinary problem this year for Dortmund. That would be a guy who could potentially help, but I don't know if he is exactly in the same position that Sanchez plays, which has been a little more wide. Aubameyang has been more of a center forward recently, and they have Lacazette and Olivier Giroud already at Arsenal.
Now, Harry Kane, he scored his 98th goal over the weekend, becoming Tottenham's highest score ever in Premier League history. Is there a chance he could be the all-time greatest goal scorer in Premier League history before he's done? He's 24.
He's got a long ways to go, and he's off to an obviously great start at this young age. Alan Shearer, the best scorer in Premier League history. I guess the biggest question for me is, will Harry Kane stay in the Premier League? There's talk about Real Madrid being interested in buying him and bringing him there to maybe help solve some of their scoring problems. They've been brutally bad this year in the league in Spain. And then it comes down to, what does Harry Kane want? Does he want to stay at Tottenham and see if they can have this nucleus together for a little while longer and maybe win the Premier League, because it doesn't look like it's going to happen this year. And they're still a young team. I do think we'll see Harry Kane move to someplace like Real Madrid in the next couple of years, though.
Well, let's talk about Real Madrid. After last season's success, not off to such a hot start this year. They're in 4th place in the Liga, 19 points behind Barcelona. What is going wrong for this team, Grant?
So many things going on for Real Madrid in the league, and it's sort of inexplicable. No one really expected that this would happen this year. They've won the last 2 UEFA Champions League titles. Zinedine Zidane's had an amazing first 2 seasons, and the wheels have fallen off. The obvious guy is Cristiano Ronaldo. You look at how many shots, he's still shooting a ton. He only has 4 goals in the league this season. Couldn't finish in this home loss they had against Villarreal over the weekend. They are closer to the relegation zone points-wise in La Liga than they are to Barcelona in first place at this point. And right now, the challenge for Real Madrid is just finish in the top 4 so you can qualify for next season's Champions League. The crazy thing is, though, they're still alive in this Champions League. They play PSG in February. Certainly, they have the talent. Maybe they can go on a run, because that's one of the few things they can actually win this year.
Now, what started as a joke has become a reality. Landon Donovan out of retirement for a second time to join Club Leon in Mexico. Why now, and what does he bring?
It's an interesting choice. He's 35 years old, so it's not like he's ancient or anything. Landon Donovan, when he first retired, did so at a very young age, still had something left to give. Now, he already came back out of retirement once a couple seasons ago with the Galaxy and didn't do much in that time back on the field. He almost signed with Real Salt Lake last year. I think Landon Donovan clearly misses playing to some extent. I think Leon is going to pay him a lot of money to do this. And we'll see how much he can give them. I don't know if he's a 90-minute player at this point, or if they even see him as that. It certainly has gotten a lot of attention in Mexico. People had wondered for many years, will Landon Donovan ever play in Mexico? He speaks good Spanish. He's obviously, over the years, been a huge rival, a subject of derision for the Mexican fans. So I'm excited to see how this goes. I'm not necessarily expecting a ton of goals.
Thanks, Grant. Appreciate your expertise as always. Maybe one day I will say Premier League as elegantly as you do.
A lot of practice goes into
He's
that.
so fancy.
Anthony Davis gave the Knicks the business at MSG in a Pelicans OT win over New York, making him our adrenaline performer presented by Toyota. Let's go places. Davis filled every aspect of the box score, totaling 48 points, 17 rebounds, 4 steals, and 3 blocks. The Brow, well, he's now averaging 26.7 points on 57% shooting, 10.5 boards, and 2 steals and 2 blocks for good measure per game. So the question is, Amy, is AD the most underappreciated player in the NBA?
I think it's a very good question. We saw what he did last night. Man, was that fun to watch last night. But I think everybody was watching because, one, those numbers were so high, and two, they were at the Garden, so you have this big spotlight on this game. But he's been doing this all year. He's been doing this for his whole career. He's incredibly athletic. He's incredibly efficient. He can shoot the three. He's great from the free throw line. He's very physical. He's super long. He's so fun to watch. He's so freaky. And it's going to be really, really, really sad to me if he never wins a ring or multiple rings. I think he needs to get out of New Orleans. It's not going to happen there. He doesn't have good players around him. They're not helping him there. He needs to go somewhere else. I'm all for mobility on this one. I know he wants to be loyal to that city. I know it's very special to him, hometown guy, but he needs to get out of there and win some rings. I would be too heartbroken to see a guy this talented miss out on that.
Yeah, the Pelicans have done an abysmal job
Yes.
surrounding him with talent. I mean, he is a building block foundational piece, and they haven't been able to put the pieces around him. And on top of that, I think they've sort of surrounded him with the kind of personalities that make being mediocre even tougher. I'm not a fan of DeMarcus Cousins as a winning player, but on Davis, the individual player, I do believe he now is maybe the most underappreciated player. He was talked about as like a top 5 player in the past, but he's sort of been forgotten about. And New Orleans, I think they might be the worst team in the league, or right there if he wasn't there. The big question with him is health. He's dealt with durability issues, but as far as ability, he's out of control. And he's been lost a little bit in the shuffle of the new age big men, because people talk about, when he went up against Kristaps Porzingis yesterday, but you got Karl Anthony Towns and Joel Embiid, and of course, even Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm not so sure any of those guys is better than Anthony Davis with his ability to move defensively laterally, his ability to score inside and outside on the offensive side.
Yeah, he definitely deserves more love, and we are giving it to you here at SI Now. AD, we got your back. The Cavaliers get another shot at the team that beat them in last year's NBA Finals tonight as they welcome the Warriors to the Q. Golden State topped Cleveland 99-92 on Christmas, of course without Steph Curry. The Cavs have lost 3 straight and 7 of 9. Robin, would a win over the Warriors get their season back on track?
I think it would get their season back on track, sure. I don't know if it means anything in the long run, because as currently constructed, I don't think the Cavs have any chance against the Warriors in a series. In a game, anytime you got LeBron James on your team, you can get it done. The question, I think, for them is Isaiah Thomas. They need him. You know, there have been questions they've had all year with some of their roster pieces, but Isaiah was supposed to come back and really help rejuvenate them. It hasn't been the case so far. He's struggling with his shot. He says he doesn't have his legs underneath of him, and he is a potent scorer, as we've all seen. So in order for them to get back on track, he needs to start playing better, because they're dealing with 2 things. They're dealing with integrating him into a team he hasn't played with all year at the same time as he is struggling. I think once he is back to his best, of course the Cavs are going to play a lot better.
So I'm really tired of hearing this narrative of get their season back on track. I don't think this season is off track. Every year in January, we go through this with LeBron. It's like deja vu all over again. They're fine. They're going to do fine. Everywhere he's gone, where he's been added, new playmakers have been added to his team, or he's been added to other teams. It takes time to gel. 18, 20 games. We saw this with Dwayne Wade. We saw this with Kyrie Irving. He and IT need some time to get that chemistry going. IT needs to get his legs back under him. He needs to knock the rust off. He's been out for a long time. He's adjusting to a new place. And I think that they're going to be fine. I think that the game tonight, though, is going to be a little interesting, because the Cavaliers are not playing defense at all, and they've had some abysmal losses by massive numbers the last couple days to the Timberwolves and to the Raptors. They've been horrible on defense. They've been lazy on defense. I think with Golden State and all of that offensive firepower, it's going to be tough for them to get it done tonight. But I do think in the long run, they're fine.
We'll react to that game right here tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, follow all the latest videos and updates at SI Now Live. I still wish I had one of those Vikings horns. It would be the perfect way to send off the show.
Goodbye. Skull.
It was like this, right?
Yes.